Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are mapping out what is, for pretty much everyone, the universal journey of a professional career. We're talking about everything from that nerve-wracking first application all the way to that final handshake and the legacy you leave behind.
So I want you to think about your career for a second. It's not just a straight line on a resume, right? Of course not. It's a story. And it's a story with really distinct, predictable chapters that almost all of us go through. And if you can recognize these chapters, well, it makes it a whole lot easier to figure out what's coming next. Okay, let's dive in.
So what does this map actually look like? Well, we've broken the entire journey down into 12 key stages, and you can think of these as falling into 3 major phases. First, getting in, then growing within, and finally, navigating transitions. Let's start right at the beginning.
Phase 1 is all about getting through the door. This is where you go from being an outsider, peering through the window, to becoming an insider who's trying to find their footing. It covers everything from how you find a role, to how you land it, and how you survive that first week.
This first phase is really a 4-step dance. It kicks off with attraction, that moment you decide, hey, that company looks interesting, and it carries you all the way through the whirlwind of your first week on the actual job.
It all starts with attraction. Before you even think about applying, you're basically a detective. You're scoping out their culture, their values, what ex-employees are saying on Glassdoor. And the source material here points out something so important. Trust your gut. You know that little wary feeling you might get? That's not just a feeling. It's data, and you need to pay attention to it.
Okay, so once you're actually in the recruitment process, the goal changes a little. Yeah, of course, you want to impress them, but it's also about what you can learn. What surprised you during the interview? What questions tripped you up? Every single interview, whether you get the job or not, is basically a free lesson. And this slide just captures the 2 sides of a job offer perfectly, doesn't it? On one side, you've got this incredible emotional high, the validation, the pure excitement. But then, boom, the practical reality kicks in instantly. There are documents to sign, a salary to negotiate, and a million things you need to figure out before day 1. All right, on to phase 2. You're in the door, now what? Well, the focus completely shifts from just getting the job to actually doing the job. This part is all about your performance, your development, and your growth inside the company. This middle phase is really where you build your reputation and your career momentum. And it happens across 5 key milestones, starting with that tricky probation period and going all the way to making strategic moves, like an internal transfer to a whole new team.
That probation period, it's your first big test. And it's not about being perfect. It's about building credibility and building it fast. So that means you've got to be tracking expectations like a hawk. You have to welcome all the feedback you can get, and you need to be really conscious of avoiding any of those early missteps that can get you in trouble.
Now, when it's time for your performance review, the biggest mistake you can make is just showing up. You can't treat it as a passive event. You have to be in the driver's seat. Your job is to come prepared, and that means documenting your wins. You need to practice self-advocacy to make your case, and just as important, you need to know what not to say when the pressure is on.
When we think about growth at work, our minds often jump to formal mentorship programs, and they're great. But look at what this suggests. Formal programs are good, but getting informal guidance from colleagues you trust, that's even better. And the most powerful tool of all, simply knowing how to ask for help. That one skill can be the single biggest driver of your development.
Getting a promotion can feel like you've crossed the finish line. But really, it's just a new starting line. The real growth happens after the celebration when you take a moment to reflect on the process. What signs got you there? And, maybe more importantly, what new blind spots do you need to prepare for in this bigger role?
And that brings us to our final phase, phase 3. These are the crossroads. This part of the journey deals with the most challenging and honestly, often the most meaningful moments of any career. We're talking about conflict, departure, and what you ultimately leave behind.
This final chapter is really defined by 3 huge transitions: how you handle a serious conflict, how you choose to leave a role, and how you decide to close out your career. Believe me, these moments say an awful lot about your professional character.
When things get tough at work, you are suddenly forced to walk this really difficult tightrope. On one side, you have to manage all your emotional reactions to stay calm and professional. But on the other,
You have to be taking the very practical, very necessary step of documenting everything. It's a tough balance to strike.
Leaving a job is a defining moment, but it's not about making a dramatic exit or burning bridges. The real focus here is on doing it the right way, making a clear-headed decision, managing your notice period like a pro, and preserving those relationships that you might need for future references.
A graceful exit isn't an escape, it's a managed process. And if you look at what that process really involves, the biggest piece of the pie is just clear, thoughtful decision-making. That's followed by pure professionalism during your notice period. See? It's not a departure, it's a strategic transition.
And that final transition, retirement, it's not just a date on the calendar. It's an active process. It means taking time for deep reflection, carefully planning your handover, and even creating personal rituals to close out the chapter with a genuine sense of purpose and closure.
So there you have it. From that first spark of attraction to an employer, all the way to the final legacy you leave, these 12 universal chapters give you a map. It's a way to understand exactly where you are right now and maybe even anticipate what's just around the corner.
So as we wrap up this explainer, the real question isn't for me, it's for you. Looking at this map of the professional journey, which chapter are you in right now? And maybe even more important, what do you want the next one to be about?